Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov has surpassed every fighter in the UFC lightweight division. With an undefeated professional record of 29-0, Khabib retired when his father and coach, Islam Nurmagomedov, died of COVID-related health issues. Since then, he's been training Islam Makhachev to succeed him as the greatest ever. Khabib has a well-laid-out plan for Makhachev to cement his name in the UFC, and that's what we'll be exploring in today's video. First up, Islam Makhachev's career so far. Makhachev hails from the remote village of Burshi in Dagestan, which is also the home of legendary UFC undefeated champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Initially, Islam was known in the UFC for being the friend of the greatest ever lightweight champion, but has forged a name for himself since then. Having defeated Bobby Green in February, Islam landed himself a title shot. His consistency and absolute dominance put him in a position to become the #1 contender for the title since his entry into the UFC 7 years ago. Islam Makhachev is now the new UFC champion after having fought and defeated Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira in the lightweight category on October 22, 2022. He might be at the top, but this career wasn't built in a day. Makhachev started his professional martial arts career in the World Combat Sambo Championship. Sambo is a Russian-style fighting style that originated in the Red Army and means self-defense without weapons. It's the same style that Khabib used to fight with in his tenure at the UFC. In 2016, Makhachev won the World Combat Sambo Championship and moved on to the popular Russian fighting promotion N1 Global. At M1, Makhachev dominated with a 5-0 record before moving to the UFC. Since his move, Islam has had one loss in the UFC. This loss came at the hands of Adriano Martins when he knocked Islam out cold in his second fight at the UFC. Little did anyone know at the time, Islam would use this loss to fuel himself. In fact, since then, he's been able to dominate every opponent that Dana White has put him in the octagon with. He hails a professional record of 23 wins and 1 loss as of the end of 2022. Next up, upcoming bouts for Islam Makhachev. Following his win in Abu Dhabi against Charles Oliveira, Islam is now crowned the UFC lightweight champion and is set to defend his title against UFC featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski in February 2023. This will be Islam's first title defense in the UFC. Khabib believes that Islam will carry the legacy of Dagestani fighters in the UFC and will supersede his success in the organization. It's safe to say that anything can happen in the UFC, and fighters pulling out of fights is not uncommon. If Volkanovski fails to make weight or is injured, Islam will most probably be fighting Dustin Poirier. This will make for a great storyline because the last time Poirier fought a Russian fighter, he was beaten down by the hands of Khabib. Now with Khabib in his protege's corner, this seems like an exciting possibility. Now, Khabib's plan for Islam and other comments in the Red Corner interview. Khabib's vision for Islam is for him to surpass him as the greatest UFC lightweight champion of all time. Khabib has made it very clear that in order to do so, Islam must defend the title at least 5 times before retiring. That is the plan that Coach Khabib has for his protege. In his interview with Red Corner, Khabib said that he expects Islam to rule the throne for 3 years before the sport passes him by, accepting that nobody can stay on top forever. For Khabib, the ideal situation is that Islam defends his title 6 times in 3 years. The way the Almighty created a man, he first becomes strong, then weak. He's young, then he's old. Knowing that, the goal is 5-6 defenses. Islam's first title defense will come against Alexander Volkanovski in UFC 284, for which Khabib is training him hard. This bout will determine the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. As for his larger plan, Khabib made it clear that he wants to continue his father's legacy, Islam Nurmagomedov. He shared his thoughts about fellow Russian fighter Sergey Pavlovich. He thinks Pavlovich can take on Francis Ngannou for the UFC heavyweight title. Khabib alludes back to an interview from 2013 in which he said that in 5 to 6 years, Russian fighters will have dominated the UFC and other fight promotions, and that is what he is working on. He names Peter Yan, Zabit Magomedsharipov, and Askar Askarov as fighters who have and can become champions in the future. I think Russian MMA fighters will completely dominate in a couple of years, was Khabib's last statement about the topic of the future of Russian fighters in MMA. It seems that he wants to have all his fighters defend their titles across the world's top MMA promotions. He has even started his own promotion by the name of Eagle FC to promote more and more fighters coming out of Russia. Moving on, Khabib has triggered some sections of MMA fans. Fans have divided reactions to his comments in the Red Corner interview. Many of them think that Khabib's plan for Makhachev is brilliant and will definitely take him to the status of the greatest lightweight of all time. Others have a different opinion, mostly stemming from comments that they have on Khabib's own stint at the UFC. Most unhappy fans are attacking the former lightweight champion for only fighting once a year and retiring in his prime, calling it a weak mindset for doing that before he could face anyone that could defeat him and ruin his undefeated record. Fans have a serious problem with the Eagle already planning only 2 fights per year for Islam, saying that this means most likely 1. That's not a championship mentality, is what one fan had to say about Khabib's planned strategy for Islam. Fans are suggesting that he should fight 3 times a year. The mention of Khabib's cousin Usman Nurmagomedov also seems seems to spark attention. Usman is currently the lightweight champion of Bellator, and many speculate that Khabib's plan is to have him rise through the ranks and replace Makhachev as he did Khabib. We think this response from fans is mostly coming from the fact that Khabib didn't give them the chance to enjoy more of his greatness, and so they are extra vocal about their prized possession, aka Islam Makhachev. This makes sense to us because we'd have done anything to watch Khabib go at it, with his poise for another few years. Coming up, is the Eagles' plan fit for his successor? Let's not forget that Khabib Nurmagomedov is the greatest UFC lightweight champion of all time, with an undefeated record of 29 wins and 0 losses. He was trained by his father, Abdulmanap, the same man who trained Islam Makhachev. Khabib and Islam were Abdulmanap's star pupils and are both cut from the same cloth of humility and hard work. While Khabib reigned supreme in the UFC, Islam was making his way into it. Both of them have coveted great professional records and are seen to be very similar fighters. The general consensus among fans is that Islam will be the next Khabib, and they go as far as to call him Little Khabib sometimes. The Eagle departed from the octagon because of Abdulmanap's untimely death. Khabib did not want to continue a career in the ring without his father and coach. He assumed another role right after his retirement, one that would see him continuing his father's legacy. In our opinion, if there's anyone who can recognize a champion, it's Khabib. He sees in Islam what his father saw in them both, the exact same thing that brought them both from Burshi, Dagestan, to the world stage. Khabib has been training with Islam since his childhood, and there's no one better than Khabib to be in the corner. He has seen the highest highs in the UFC with the same style as Islam. Whatever Khabib plans for Islam, it'll be out of sheer experience at the top and love for his brother. He has already said that Islam will prove to be even better than he was, which is all a part of Khabib's new journey as a coach for Russian fighters. We think fans should trust Khabib to make Islam an undeniable force in the UFC and mold his career to new heights. Finally, MMA needs Muslim fighters. Another thing that we'd like to add is that this statement does not mean that the plan is set in stone. A title defense 6 times is a feat on its own. It's very possible for the trajectory of Makhachev's career to change with his bout with Volkanovski, so MMA fans shouldn't be disheartened by Khabib's plan, because what he's describing is an ideal situation. It's possible for Makhachev to be fighting at his prime in 3 years, continuing to do much more than what Khabib expects. Let's not forget why Khabib retired. The only reason for his retirement was his father's passing. If that had not happened, you're sure Khabib would be reigning dominant in the UFC lightweight division. Saying that Khabib has a weak mindset for not wanting to lose and retiring before he could is wrong, and that wasn't the reason he left. Khabib would have had no incentive to come back to the octagon as a coach if it was. To say that Islam will follow the same pattern that Khabib did is not right either, as the two are different fighters. Yes, Islam does view Khabib as a godfather, but that doesn't mean that he'll retire early. Another thing to remember is what Dana White has to lose. Dana has every incentive to keep Islam fighting for as long as he can because he brings in most of the Muslim world's viewership, which was a concern when Khabib put the gloves down. With Islam in the octagon and Khabib by his side, the possibilities for their success are endless, and we believe that there's no telling what's going to happen in the UFC because of the unpredictability of the sport. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think about Khabib's comments and plans for Islam? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.